Hello guys, welcome back. Today we are going to mess with the new IOD spring release. I'm going to start out with this one. It's called Invitation Only. I'm going to create some little wood plaques. So I went ahead and created these two molds using some amazing casting. I completely forgot to hit record, so I don't have that part filmed. I'm going to go ahead and create some wood plaques. So I wanted to give these a rusty effect. I'm going to try out this Modern Masters rust effect thing that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. I've never used it before, and I'm really terrible at following directions. But we will see what we get. I am going to start out with the primer as it says on the directions. I go ahead and give it 2 coats, and I don't believe I give it the correct amount of time. I think it's set like 30 minutes before you go in with the next step. But in the end, I do like them. So I am going to go in with 2 full coats, and then we'll move on to the next step. So this is them after 2 coats. I did use my heat gun, which I'm not sure if that's recommended or not. But moving on to the next step, I am going to use the oxidizing iron paint, which goes straight over this brown. This brown, I actually really like this color, so we'll see what we get. And I do go in with 2 coats of this color. Only thing is, I think the box said to wait like 30 minutes or something like that, but I don't know. I don't ever follow directions. I'm so bad at that. So after these 2 coats, it says to use the rust activation spray. I gave this a couple spritz, and then I just kind of walked away from it, and I came back to it in a couple hours to see what it has done. And this is it after a couple hours. I really love it. I am going to go in with some wax to just give it a little bit more aged look, and then I am going to add some gold as well. So I am going to go on with this gold folk art paint and just add it to all the highs of my mold to bring out all the detail these molds offer. And oh my goodness, it's just so, I just love this mold. There's just so much you can do with it. I was thinking about a moody like gallery wall you can add these to. I may do some for my bedroom. We shall see, but what do you guys think so far? So to add a little bit more patina, I am going to use this DIY wax paint from DIY. It's called Shipwrecked. I picked this up accidentally one time thinking it was clear wax. So I don't really use it that much, but maybe I should start using it more often. It just adds the right amount of patina to these type of crafts. So I go in all the little spaces where I want to add the wax and wipe it right off. And it will just sit in the little crevices of my mold here, not overpowering at all. I love it. So here I do the same thing to the little cat, and then we'll move on to the next step. So to create my plaque, I'm going to go ahead and use this cardboard to give my mold a more elevated look. And I am going to use these wood planks that I picked up from, I think, the thrift store. I picked up like a bag of them. So I'm going to start out by giving them a coat of white paint, and then we will decoupage. Next, I'm going to go in with a thin layer of Mod Podge. And as you can tell, the paint is not on there perfect. It's still very transparent, but that is okay. The napkins I use are a little on the dark side, so it does well. So these napkins I have used before. I love them so much, but I don't know where they are from. I picked them up at an estate sale. So I go ahead and place my napkin down, and I'm going to put this plastic glove on just to smooth out as much wrinkles as I can. Then I just give it some time to dry, and here I'm just going to add some Mod Podge over the top to seal the top of the napkin. And moving on, while I set those aside to dry, we are going to work on our cardboard here. I went ahead and added some Mod Podge, and I'm going to go ahead and decoupage some of that velvet fabric I had left from previous projects. It was actually a dress that I picked up from the thrift store, the Goodwill bins or something. So I'm going to go ahead and decoupage my fabric onto my cardboard. And I think I have mentioned before, I tried hot glue instead of the Mod Podge, but hot glue, it burns through the fabric and it leaves these ugly marks you could see on the outside. So I prefer to use Mod Podge. You just get a much cleaner look. Then on the back side, this will not show, so I'm going to go ahead and add some hot glue just to secure those ends down. So to secure my piece of cardboard here down to my wood plank, I'm going to go ahead and add some Gorilla Glue and some hot glue to make sure it is securely bonded to my piece of wood. Then I'm going to go ahead and add some hot glue to the back of my mold here, and I'm going to place that onto my piece of cardboard. Then just using that same folk art paint in the color gold, I'm just going to go around all the edges of my wood plank. And with this same color, I go ahead and color some half wood beads just to add to the corners of my cardboard. Now my original idea was to kind of like screw this in somehow or glue it on as a hanger. This is just a salvage piece of metal, but I changed my mind and I decided to go with these little screw hangers that I picked up on Amazon. I think it was like 20 for $6.99, and I like this look much better. So I didn't have my drill anywhere nearby. I just used this thumbtack to create the hole where my screw is going to go into. I screw it in. It's fairly easy. You got to give it a little pressure and then just screw in the little hanger. And that is it for this one. Let me know what you think. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and use this piece of wood that my husband had cut up a couple months ago. It's the last one I had left over. I'm also going to use the IOD Stamps Pastiche from IOD. So I'm going to go ahead and start out by giving it a coat of white chalk paint using the color Plaster from Waverly Chalk Paint. So I do end up giving it a light distress with a 220 sandblock, but in the end I do end up taking it outside just to give it a more heavier distress. So starting out with all new stamps, it is recommended that you give it a light sand just to prep your stamps. And that is what I did here. So I'm going to start out by stamping the little nest out of this set of stamps. Using some ink from Hobby Lobby. So I'm going to turn my stamp over and I'm going to go ahead and stamp my piece of wood. Try not to press too hard, just kind of running your fingers over the top of the stamp just to make sure that you get the imprint on your piece of wood. So I do want to add a bird cage around my nest here. So I am going to use the mask to cover up my stamp so it won't get overlapped with my next stamp. I think this was the perfect addition to these IOD stamps, is how they printed the stamp on the mask as well. It just makes them a lot easier to use. I really love that. So I'm going to ink up my bird cage here. And I'm going to stamp right over that, and you will see how once I remove the mask, I'm not stamping anywhere over the nest because it is protected by this mask. So here, just using one hand to hold the stamp down and my other hand to tap on my stamp just to make sure it is imprinted onto my piece of wood. So next up, I want to create like a brick wall background. I'm going to use the Portobello Road stamp, IOD stamp, and I'm going to go ahead and use this brick stamp to add the background. So now I'm going to go ahead and cover my bird cage, and then I'm going to stamp away with the brick wall. Next up, I'm going to use the Apothecary decor stamps. It comes with these little embellishments that I'm going to go ahead and add to the top of my piece of wood, just to add a little detail on top. So I kind of feel like this would look so pretty colored in like with watercolors or something. But I'm still on the fence about that, so I'm going to leave it as is. And we'll see if I change my mind. So I'm going to go in around the edges with some Distress Oxide from Hobby Lobby to give it a little bit more of an aged look. Then I went ahead and drilled a little hole to the top of my wood here, just so I can add this a little piece of, it's like a picture holder that I cut off of a different, it was like a Christmas one. I just cut it off, and I'm going to add it to the top of my wood here as just to create a little folder holder. So I go ahead and add a little piece of lace, and that is it for this one. And last project, I'm going to go ahead and paint up these a little recipe box that I picked up at the Goodwill bins. I'm going to use these Apothecary label stamps and these conservatory molds to create my little box. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of baking powder to my mold here so it can release a little bit easier. So using some doll's clay from Hobby Lobby, I went ahead and rolled it up and pressed it into my mold. So I go ahead and turn my mold over to help release the clay from the mold. And then I will go ahead and add a little bit of Titebond to the back of my mold and glue it on to my little box. So out of the Apothecary letters, I'm going to spell out the word recipes, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp that onto my clay before it dries. And here I'm just using the bottom of my paper just to make sure I have my letters straight. Then I'll pick it up with the transfer sheet, and then I will stamp the mold. Next up, I'm going to go in with this color from a Waverly chalk paint. I think it's called Dusk. And as you can see here, I'm just stippling it on to my box here just to create a little bit of texture. I didn't want too much texture, so I didn't really add an additive or anything. I'm just using the paint to create the texture. Then I'm just going to use the 220 sandblock to give it a little bit of distress on the edges. Then just using some brown paint, I'm going to go ahead and dry brush over this blue just to bring out some of the texture and the details and just give it a little bit more interest. Then on just the mold, I'm going to go in with some antique wax to bring out some of the details and bring out the word recipes. And I quickly wipe back. When you use the antique wax, you gotta work really fast. If not, it just starts to look like a big mess if you don't clear coat first, which I don't. I actually do like the brown to stick a little bit more than when you start with clear wax. Then I just hit it with that same gold paint that I've been using just to bring out the details a little bit more. And then I will go around the box with a little bit of distress oxide to give it a more distressed aged look. And that is pretty much it for this video. If you like what you see, please subscribe and follow for more. Share it out with a friend. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.